Good evening. Welcome back to the Select Board meeting before the third night of town meeting on November 17th, 2022. This is our regular session. So let's start with news updates and announcements. Are there any news? Miriam.
Thank you, Chair Hamilton. I have two announcements. First, I want to let everybody know that the ARPA subcommittee is meeting tomorrow at 2:00, right, Mike? Tomorrow at 2:00. And we'll be providing an update on where things are with phase one. We'll be talking about some of the changes that we're going to be implementing for phase two. And we encourage you to attend. And the other thing I want to let people know is that there are some upcoming COVID-19 booster and flu vaccine clinics happening Monday, November 28th from 3 to 8 at the Pierce School, Monday, December 5th from 3 to 8 at Brookline Town Hall, Thursday, December 8th at Baker School, and Monday, December 12th from 3 to 8 at Brookline Town Hall. You can sign up on the town website. And I would really highly encourage everyone to think about getting their booster and their flu vaccine, especially if they're going to be traveling with the family during the holiday season. The flu season is already shown itself, and there have been some quite severe cases so far. So please take care of yourself and take care of your neighbors and get vaccinated. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Thank you very much. There's a very nice event happening right now as we are meeting right now. And for the second year in a row, to my regret, I haven't been able to attend it, but maybe we'll figure out what to do about that in the future. So I'm talking about the community Thanksgiving dinner that is co-sponsored by the Brookline Police Department, the Police Union, and the Rotary Club. And it's going on at the high school. And I got a very, I thought a sort of a good news message from somebody who's very involved in organizing the event earlier today. It's very short, and I just want to read it. Because I had commented, I'd asked the question, how many people signed up? And the answer came back, 100 people signed up. And that was better than they expected, and it was so good in terms of the response of people to this invitation to a community dinner that they actually had to stop signing up people for the dinner. They had to say, I'm sorry, we can't take any more signups. So that's how the message starts off. We had to shut off the signups to make sure we could accommodate the 100 okay in the space. The number who've signed up has doubled since last year, and hopefully we can do even more next year and keep it growing, maybe 2 seatings or maybe even a buffet. The Tappan Green Space is really wonderful. That's where they're having it this year. And then the message ends, and we're working with the kids this is the high school kids who are in the culinary program at Brookline High School. And so it's a nice partnership all around. So great event. And my comment in response to this message was, this feels like an event that's going to just keep growing in future years. And I think that's a tribute to the police department, the police union, and the Rotary. So good for them. And sorry I couldn't be there. I was anticipating having some turkey with the folks, but not this year, maybe next year.
And the high school.
Yeah.
The high school is a
oh, and the high school, of course. Thank you, Bernard.
Okay, any other news announcements, updates? We will slide into public comment. John?
Yes, thank you very much, Heather. Let me just go to my script, which I will do right now. And the introduction to public comment is that thank you to those who are joining us for public comment. Opportunity for us to hear your perspective on the issues in Brookline that matter to you. A few rules. Each person speaking tonight is limited to 3. I think we've made an exception for our first speaker tonight. Don't need to use the entire time, but you may if you like. Please refrain from personal attacks and from addressing personnel issues. Members of the public sometimes raise questions during public comment. We may be able to provide a quick answer to your question, more likely to work with staff to get a more thorough answer. and respond over email. We will let the speakers know when they have 30 seconds remaining and when their time is up. And those who have more to say are welcome to send an email to board members expressing their thoughts in greater detail. And Devin, you want to introduce our first public comment person?
First person signed up for public comment is Felina Silver Robinson. You've been promoted to a panelist. You can unmute and share your video if you're comfortable, and your time will begin.
Thank you to John Van Scoyoc for inviting me here today to read a proclamation on the National Native American Heritage Month for 2022. During National Native American Heritage Month, we celebrate Indigenous peoples past and present and rededicate ourselves to honoring tribal sovereignty, promoting tribal self-determination, and upholding the United States' solemn trust and treaty responsibilities to tribal nations. America has not always delivered on its promise to equal dignity and respect to Native Americans. For centuries, broken treaties, dispossession, and ancestral land and policies of assimilation and termination sought to decimate Native populations and their ways of life. But despite this painful history, Indigenous peoples, their governments, and their communities have persevered and flourished. As teachers and scholars, scientists and doctors, writers and artists, business leaders and elected officials, heroes in uniform, and so much more. They have made immeasurable contributions to our country's progress. We must do more to ensure that Native Americans have every opportunity to succeed and that their expertise informs our federal policy making. That is why my administration is engaging in meaningful consultation with tribal leaders, particularly when it comes to treaty rights, reserved rights, managed and stewardship of federal lands, consideration of indigenous knowledge, and other policies that affect Native peoples. That is also why I appointed Secretary Deb Haaland to be the first Native American Cabinet Secretary, and why more than 50 Native Americans now serve in significant roles across the executive branch. Meanwhile, we are creating new jobs in Native American communities and bolstering infrastructure in tribal areas. My administration's American Rescue Plan made the largest ever investment in Indian countries to help tribal nations combat the COVID-19 pandemic and to support tribal economy recovery. My administration's bipartisan infrastructure law secured more than $13 billion exclusively for Native communities to deliver high-speed internet to tribal lands, build safer roads and bridges, modernize sanitation systems, and provide clean drinking water, all while putting people to work through the Inflation Reduction Act. We are lowering the price of healthcare coverage and capping drug costs for Indigenous families. We are empowering tribes to fight drought, improve fisheries, and transition to clean energy as part of the most significant climate investment in this nation has ever made. Those investments include climate adaptation, planning, and community-led relocation efforts, funding tribal electrification programs to provide power to unelectrified homes, and making environmental justice block grants available to help alleviate legacy population, bolstering conservation and programs across the country, and restoring protections for treasured lands that Indigenous peoples have tirelessly stewarded, such as Bears Ears and the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument. We are also helping Native communities heal from intergenerational trauma caused by past policies. Last year, the Department of the Interior launched the Federal Indian Boarding School Initiative to shed light on the harmful history of forced cultural assimilation at these academic institutions. We are investing in tribal language, revitalizing, protecting tribal voting rights, and working with tribal partners to tackle the crisis of missing or murdered Indigenous peoples. As we look ahead, my administration will continue to write a new and better chapter in the story of nation-to-nation relationships. We will defend tribal sovereignty, self-government, self-determination, and homelands of tribal nations. We will support tribal economies, recognizing that tribal governments provide a vast array of physical infrastructure, social services, and good paying jobs that benefit their citizens and surrounding communities. We will keep fighting for better healthcare, childcare, education, and housing in tribal communities. We will also always honor the profound impact Native Americans continue to have in shaping our nation and bringing us closer to more perfect union we know we can and must be. This is signed by our President, Joseph R. Biden Jr. Thank you.
At this time, there are 16 attendees and no one has used the hand raise or Q&A feature to indicate they'd like to make a comment.
Thank you very much, Ms. Robinson, for reading that in its entirety. Okay, if there is no other public comment, we will move right into our miscellaneous. It's quite short, thank goodness. But first, we do have the meeting minutes from our November 15th meeting. Any questions, comments, edits about those? Otherwise, I will move. Oh, John, so sorry.
No, I should have got my hand up sooner. I actually just want to make a sort of transitional comment. As you said, thank you so much to Felina from our Indigenous Celebrations Committee. But in addition, I want to recommend to people, there is a wonderful feature on Felina with an interview with her in the Sagamore. And so people can go, which is the high school newspaper for Brookline High. And so people can just, Google search Brookline High Sagamore, and they'll see, they'll learn a lot more about Felina, and they'll learn a lot more about what it feels like to be Native American, moving in the culture of our times through a period of transition where for the first time in a long time, there is some appropriate recognition of what is owed to Native American populations. So I'm so glad that Felina was willing to come here tonight and read that proclamation from the president. And I learned a lot from it. Otherwise I wouldn't have asked that we have it read here tonight. So thank you very much, Felina.
So the meeting minutes, any comments, questions, edits?
Yeah, I have one.
Okay, Bernard?
Yeah. I did make some edits to the minutes to clarify the Baffin grant. I don't think there's anything controversial, but just to clarify.
Okay. Any other comments before I move them to be approved? I will move the meeting minutes from our last meeting on the 15th for approval as amended by Bernard. All those in favor? Bernard?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Miriam?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The rest of our miscellaneous agenda, I will move approving the proclamation recognizing Small Business Saturday on November 26th, 2022. And then moving the MWRA infiltration and inflow financial assistance and loan agreement package and authorize the town administrator and finance director to sign and execute on behalf of the town a total financial assistance amount of, big numbers, $2,229,000, of which $1,671,750 shall be in the form of a grant and $557,250 shall be represented by the loan agreement. All those in favor? Bernard?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Miriam?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Reminder to select board members that they need a wet signature, at least from 3 of us. I think Bernard and I plan on going tomorrow.
There are 2 there now. John's in mine.
Okay, good.
I'm going tonight after town meeting. Make sure it's done.
Okay, so our calendar, we have warrant article 2 on collective bargaining. I think that there is late breaking news, so let's hear from our director of HR.
Good evening, everyone. This is Ann Braga, HR Director. How are you?
Very good.
So we have 2 ratified agreements, one of which the Select Board voted on earlier this evening. And the next one will be done before the meeting on the 29th of November. So before you tonight, we have the AFSCME Library Agreement, which continues the wage pattern of 1% in fiscal 22, 3% in fiscal 23, and 3% in fiscal 24. Within the agreement, we have several changes, one of which is that the paraprofessional librarians will increase their vacation leave from 2 to 4 weeks, effective in fiscal 23. We have altered the compensation for evening meeting coverage and programming coverage from a nightly rate of $13 to an hourly rate of $5.50 starting at 6 p.m. And that provides additional resources for the new library director, who was part of the negotiation team, to better schedule their evening programming as they ramp back up on live programs coming out of COVID. We had
Great.
some administrative changes as well.
Wonderful. And just to be clear, we are considering voting favorable action on this as it needs to go before town meeting, correct?
Yes, that is, I believe, what your intent was.
Any questions or comments? I believe this is a public hearing, so we will open it up to members of the public. If anyone does want to speak, please let Devin know. Any comments or questions by select board members? This is not the entirety of all of our collective bargaining, but it's where we are at the moment. John.
I hope it's appropriate to say a public thank you to the negotiators on both sides of the table. And I hope this agreement is a signal of more agreements to come.
This is a public hearing. This would be the time that we would seek public comment. Devin, do we have anybody that would like to speak?
At this time, there are 15 attendees and no one has used the hand raise or Q&A feature to indicate they'd like to make a comment.
Maybe they're saving their comments for town meeting. Okay, I will close the public hearing and we should probably vote on this, which is actually outside of our custom. We usually wait.
You might want to wait till the 29th.
Okay. So we've had the public hearing. We will wait before we vote, which I'm much more comfortable with. I don't like voting the same night that we hear something. Okay. Any
if I could just interrupt for a minute. Actually,
yeah.
I do want you to vote on Article 2, and then we'll put a supplement together so that town meeting can be informed of the contract.
Sorry, it's my fault. Yes.
Okay. Go ahead. No worries. It's nice to know that I'm not losing my touch. Okay. So anyone object to taking the vote here tonight? Seeing none. Okay, so I will move favorable action on warrant article 2. All those in favor. Bernard?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Miriam?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Okay, that concludes that agenda item for now. We are moving into police department authorization to hire requests, or is this promotions?
It's both.
Both. Great. Okay. Do we have the chief?
Good evening.
Good evening. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me back. I appreciate the opportunity to come back before you tonight with the names of the 3 candidates for promotion to lieutenant that you authorized just 2 days ago on Tuesday. And you can let me know, I could read all 3 at the same time if you need one vote, or happy to have vote them in one by one, whatever your preference.
Does anybody have a preference? I think since time is of the essence, we should
Me?
probably do all 3 together. Yeah? Okay, I'm
Sounds
seeing some nodding of the heads.
Okay, great. So first up, we have the promotion of Sergeant Brian Sutherland to the rank of lieutenant. Brian Sutherland joined the police department in 1998. He was assigned to the patrol division for 15 years before taking a position in the traffic division. He was promoted to sergeant in 2015. He's been working for the past year as the supervisor of the domestic violence and juvenile unit within the detective division. In addition to his responsibilities within that unit, Sergeant Sutherland oversees the patrol bicycle unit, which supports various town events and assists with area-wide events such as the July 4th festivities, major sporting events, protests, and other high-profile events. Sergeant Sutherland grew up here in Brookline. He graduated from Brookline High School, attended Kent School for a prep year, and he received his bachelor's degree in sociology from the University of Connecticut, where he was also elected as the team captain for the 1994 hockey team. Sergeant Sutherland earned a master's degree in criminal justice from Western New England University and received the FBI Lead a Trilogy Award in October of 2017 after successfully completing all 3 tenets of their leadership development program. Next up for promotion is Sergeant Casey Hatchett. Casey Hatchett joined the department in 1998 as well and worked for 4 years in the patrol division before becoming the department's first ever crime analyst in 2002. In that role, in addition to her analytical and reporting responsibilities, she worked as a grant writer and as a key part of the town's emergency management team. Sergeant Hatchett initiated the town's community emergency management team, better known as CERT, and most recently the junior CERT for high school students. She was promoted to sergeant in 2018 and reassigned to the community service division after serving a year as a patrol supervisor. Sergeant Hatchett is a civically engaged resident of the town and brings to this position a wealth of knowledge about our community, its people, its organizations, its complex political and social structure, and its needs. She has a demonstrated ability to work collaboratively with the town agencies, with NGOs, and private sector partners. Sergeant Hatchett holds a bachelor's degree in political science from BU and a master's degree in criminal justice administration from Western New England College. She's been an active member of numerous community groups, and her awards include Officer of the Year in 2020, the Rotary Club's Community Service Award in 2016, the Community Foundation's Unsung Hero Award in 2013, and Brookline's Unsung Heroine recipient from the Massachusetts Commission on the Status of Women in 2008. Last but not least, Sergeant Raymond Richards. Ray Richards joined the Brookline Police Department in December of 2011, following nearly 6 years of active duty service as a military police captain. Almost immediately after graduating from the Boston Police Academy, Sergeant Richards demonstrated strengths in community outreach and was assigned to a community service role designed to service calls and develop relationships with the residents of the Brookline Housing Authority properties. In 2018, he was promoted to the rank of sergeant. He currently works in the patrol division on the day shift, where he embraces the crisis intervention philosophy and has shown a passion and commitment to assisting military veterans in crisis. His dedication to the residents of this town and his work with the veterans earned him the department's Public Service Award in 2018. In addition to the Brookline Police Department, Sergeant Richards is a major in the Army National Guard with over 20 years of service. He currently serves as the operations officer for all military police forces in the Commonwealth. He holds a master's degree in business and organizational management from Webster University, a bachelor's degree in sociology from UMass Amherst, and he recently graduated from the Command Staff General College.
Great. At this time, I will move all 3 of those names. I read them off again. So authorization to promote Sergeant Brian Sutherland to lieutenant, Sergeant Casey Hatchett to lieutenant, and Sergeant Ray Richards to lieutenant. Any comments before I call the roll, you'll have an opportunity to congratulate once it's official. Okay, I will call the roll. All those in favor, Bernard,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Miriam,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye.
Thank you very much. And a promotion ceremony will be held tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. in Hunneman Hall.
Excellent. And we will have somebody there. John, are you able to attend?
I will
Oh,
be
Bernard.
there.
Yeah,
Excellent.
I'll be
Others
going there
welcome.
too, although I may be a little bit late, Chief Pastor, because I have another meeting, but I'll be there.
As long as you have a note, we'll let you in.
I notice I'm
Excellent.
always late.
Thank you all very much.
Oh, we have the authorizations, right, for the sergeants?
I believe we did that last week. There was some confusion.
No, so we did lieutenants on
Right.
Tuesday. We did the ATH for the lieutenants on Tuesday, and now we're doing the ATH for the sergeants.
Great.
And sorry, just give me the time and date again of the promotion ceremony.
Sure, it'll be tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. at Hunneman Hall in the library.
Okay, thank you.
And so with the creation or these three promotions, we will then need to backfill the position of sergeant. So at this time, I'd like to ask the board for authorization to hire 3 civil service sergeants.
Great. You actually preempted my question, which is if these are in civil service, I should know this by now, but
Okay.
it's always nice to have the reminder. Okay. Any questions or comments? I will move the backfilling, the approval of the authorization to hire request for the 3 recently vacated sergeant positions. All those in favor? Bernard,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Miriam,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, now the Newberry property discussion. Chaz, do you want to kind of kickstart this off as we wait to promote some of our invited guests?
I would love to, thank you. And I would also just note that our that staff are happy to answer any questions both here or from that individual select board members may have offline individually regarding the kind of movements on this front. Go ahead, Bernard, sorry.
Yeah, no, I just want to make clear, this is separate from a charge that will be presented later on with respect to the Newberry Uses Committee.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to kind of bring up is this
Okay.
kind of run of show for this item. As you
A lot of
know,
moving parts.
yes, there are a lot of moving parts. We want to make sure that we are walking and chewing gum at the same time. There are 2 interrelated questions here for the town to consider. One is, what is the long-term future of the Newberry College site that the town has purchased? And the other is, in the intervening period, there has been a request from the schools department to potentially utilize the top 2 floors of the main Newberry building that was purchased as a potential place to house students that would be displaced in the event that the Pierce school reconstruction, which is on the ballot in May, is approved and moves forward. I would just note for the board in advance of this to kind of as you think through the temporary usage of Newberry by both town and school, but potential temporary usage by both town and school in these this intervening period, that the long-term discussion of what Newberry can be used for can happen contemporaneously, and that the timeline that we are thinking of on this front is dependent on 2 questions that the planning department put before you in the late summer, where I think just events have overtaken our discussions on this. So I want to refresh the board's memory and the broader public's memory on questions that will inform your ultimate charge in creating a Newberry Commission for its ultimate disposition. One is, when is the earliest period of time when is the earliest fiscal year that you would feel comfortable moving forward on committing unexcluded debt or revenue in the capital improvement plan to redeveloping Newbury College. That is to say, if you don't want to go to the public to ask for a debt exclusion, what is the earliest year? And I will say from staff's perspective, in terms of the current SIP, it is very full leading into the out years currently. So even if there was a negative vote on the Pierce project and some other temporary purpose needed to be considered for Newbury College, it would likely, I would say, it would be virtually certain not to move forward because of, unless a debt exclusion would be considered in the current years. We're talking more about a 5 to 10 year line before even some of that SIP money starts to become starts to free up, and we can start thinking about whether the priority is to start dedicating that to Newbury or to continue to prioritize other deferred maintenance or reconstruction issues, end of life reconstruction issues on that front. The other question for you, and this is more of a guide rail for any potential commission, is what is the order of magnitude of the budget? The plan for Newbury reconstruction. The planning department gave you over the summer a kind of basket of options, talking about order of magnitude. Are we talking about a $50 million project? Are we talking about a $200 million project? Are we talking about a $10 million project? Are we talking about less than $1 million in renovation of it for something like, I don't know, office space? So those options are all on the table before you and can be used to guide any potential commission that you decide to put forward. But you can also let the commission start trying evaluate that. And the last component of this, obviously, is in moving forward, selecting committee members, commission members, chair from the select board, and so a member from the select board, and so forth. And the planning department is ready and eager to assist in terms of, there's been a lot of community interest on this front. They are very happy to discuss with any of the select board members who decide to serve or in the liaison role, what's been asked so far, where the kind of interest lies. So with that in mind, for the long-term proposals for Newbury, there is a request from the school district to have for short-term usage of Newbury College for the duration of the Pierce project. And for the timeline, the budget, and the sort of discussion of how the school district arrived at this ask of the select board, I want to turn it over to Mr. Perlman and Dr. Guillory from the schools to walk us through that ask.
Great. Are you guys ready?
We are ready. David, you want me to go first?
Sure, go right ahead. Dr. Guillory has prepared a brief slideshow to help illustrate some of the points that are being made in this pitch to utilize Newbury temporarily as Pierce swing space.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Devin, can I share screen here or?
Yes, you're all set.
Thank you. So for your, let me make sure I hit the right buttons here. So for your consideration this evening, first I want to begin by thanking Chaz as well as the building department for their partnership and thinking through some of these aspects. We certainly want to thank the Pierce building leadership team also for their engagement or their thoughtful engagement in this process. So our long-term goal, as you all may know, is to educate all students in town-owned spaces. Right now, the district is currently utilizing leased spaces for Clark Road, for our Beacon Beep location, as well as our Putterham location. And again, our long-term goal is to return all of our students to town district property. For the Pierce project, should it be approved, that construction timeline is expecting or anticipating 4 years. So that means that our Pierce students and staff would need to move somewhere mid-February and move out of current Pierce in mid-February and then move back into the new building in July of 2027. And so that covers the term that we are looking to cover here. When we look at what we've expended specifically on the 2 Clark Road lease, looking at it from fiscal year 20 through the 5-year lease period, which is next fiscal year, the total expenditures there is just north of $5.5 million or $5.5 million. When we look at, again, space that was needed, is certainly needed for our capacity, but we also recognize that Town Parks maintains the grounds and snow removal aspect that's not related or reflected in the 5.4 million. And also our town building department pays for utilities under this current lease. And those numbers aren't reflected in the 5.4 million. When we think about savings and costs during the construction period, if we look at the FY25 lease, that number is anticipated to be 1.3 million. And that's what you see crossed out here, as we are not planning to take advantage of this particular or extending the lease further at this point. But if we were on a hypothetical schedule to look at what it would cost us to continue renting the Clark Road with no price increase, and we know that that's not very likely in today's market, but if we remained flat, the total rent would exceed $4 million in rental costs. So our belief is, that we think we could move into Newberry for significantly less money than certainly spending $4 million for the temporary period. Currently in the Pierce relocation budget, there's 115,000, set aside in FY24 for relocation. And then when we look at the total Pierce relocation budget of 1.5 million, that includes some renovations and repairs for the buildings and playgrounds. Right now, this is focused on Old Lincoln School, so we definitely need to think about the costs, any repair costs that we know about Newberry right now. The busing and crossing guards, there's a little north of 600,000 for that. Moves and disposals, 300,000, and then the mounted projection systems needed. And that is again in the Pierce relocation budget at a number of 1.5 million. So it's other sites that we certainly considered. There was considerable engagement around leveraging the Driscoll project. We know that it will be coming online in the fall of 23. We certainly looked at the opportunities that may exist in other PSB schools, as well as considered or contemplated other lease spaces. And I'll let Chair Perlman address those specifically. But again, the big idea here is that we have exhausted or looked at other opportunities as well. And then my final slide here is to say that both the town and school departments jointly toured the buildings and are committed to coexisting in the shared space for the temporary allotted time that Administrator Carey talked about. So with that, I'll pass the mic over to Chair Perlman for any additional comments.
Yes, so first, thank you very much, Dr. Guillory, for that presentation. I think it's very informative for the select board and the general public to have an understanding of why we have landed on Newberry as a preferred option. I do want to reiterate that the $4 million base cost for rental expenses alone is a very conservative, unrealistic expectation. As you well understand, we cannot go into specifics publicly about negotiations that took place in executive session, but I can say it was considerably more than that. So 4 million is really the baseline if we were just to continue with what the rental prices have been up to date, but it would certainly be more than that. We, as Dr. Guillory stated, are very optimistic that the modifications that would be necessary to retrofit Newbury for use as Pierce swing space would be magnitudes less than that $4 million price. Pierce students, unfortunately, are accustomed to sharing space. And so to continue that for a few more years by putting up some dividers, while not ideal, they could get by on a temporary basis doing that, and dividers would not be very expensive. The initial impression that we have from looking at the space at Newbury is that with some fairly minor adjustments, we could make it usable for the schools almost immediately. The principal of the Pierce School has toured Newbury, and she was quite optimistic that she could use that space. She was actually very enthusiastic when she saw it and the potential for it. In terms of other considerations that we looked at, Dr. Guillory mentioned that we considered Driscoll. Driscoll's being built as a 4-section school. At least initially, there may be some additional capacity there, but there were several challenges with proceeding with the Driscoll option. First of all, having 6 sections at minimum, it might even be 7, for grades 6, 7, and 8 at Driscoll would be unworkable from a scheduling perspective. Secondly, if we were to fill Driscoll with some of the grade levels at Pierce, we would then have the quandary of what to do about BEEP. Because if we're not going to be extending the Clark Road lease in an effort to be good fiscal stewards to our taxpayers, those BEEP classrooms would have to go somewhere. Right now, we're having discussions about the long-term plans for BEEP, and those include utilizing some of the space at Driscoll as a way to alleviate some of those capacity pressures with the BEEP program once we no longer have the Clark Road lease. Given the timeline that the town administrator outlined at the beginning, that realistically there could not be a major reuse of Newbury for a considerable period of time, it seems that we would not be losing anything whatsoever by utilizing Newbury on a temporary basis as swing space while the town determines what that long-term use will be. These are not mutually exclusive options. They can occur simultaneously, as Mr. Carey stated. So I would be asking that the select board approve Newbury on a temporary basis as swing space for the Pierce School. And with that, Dr. Guillory and I are available to field any questions that you might have.
Miriam, and then John.
Thank you for that presentation. Thankful for your thoughtfulness. I'm just curious in terms of play space, what you're thinking with the Newbury campus. And I'm not that familiar with it, so I don't know if there is existing play space, but that's something I think about with this age group especially.
So there's actually a playground directly next to it. And also there's a very large field. During the pandemic, we used that for high school graduation. It's actually a great space that I'd like to see used for high school graduations from here on out. So there's actually quite a bit of outdoor recreation space.
Thank you.
John?
Yes, thank you again for, thank you as well for the presentation. Could we have some numbers as to the anticipated enrollment, let's say in the next school year at Driscoll, and the anticipated enrollment at the high school, and the number of classroom spaces at Driscoll? How many students, what is the student capacity compared to the enrollment at Driscoll? And what is the student capacity compared to the enrollment at the high school?
We certainly can get that information to you. I'd like to provide that to you on a separate cover. As we're going through our budgeting process right now, we're presently working on projections for next year.
I have to say, without those numbers, I don't know how we can make a decision tonight on whether Newbury is the best approach to this.
I don't think there was there's an intention, because I think too, with that open question about the charge and not being ready for a charge in the long-term use, I think the goal of this was more informational so that we could figure out what information is missing before we can make informed decisions on both short-term and long-term uses for Newbury.
And we're going to need swing space. We know that. So I don't know whether or not we want to make a decision here tonight. That remains to be seen, but I think we have enough information to start the moving towards a direction. David?
Just looking at this macro level, the old Lincoln can accommodate 6 grade levels, and that's the most. So as you just said, Heather, we would need to have additional swing space somewhere for 3 grade levels. That would very likely be 4 sections, or at least 3 sections for each of those grade levels. Newbury is an existing school building that is currently sitting mostly empty. There's some use by the buildings department, primarily at the basement level, but that's about it. So it's there and it's almost ready to go. We might as well utilize it while we are simultaneously working on what the long-term use of the facility will be.
Bernard?
Yeah, first of all, I have a little conflict here. I'm on the building committee, Pierce, and also a select board member. But I think that the proposal put forth allows me to sort of balance both of those. It's very important that we, maintain the space for the building department and in the basement, and I think the first floor, while at the same time accommodating the needs, both financial and otherwise, of the schools. And I think this, proposal does that over, a period of time before we're going to be making a decision on what the long-term use of the property is. And just remind people, this is right next to the Newbury, what's it called? Newbury Reservoir Park. I mean, it's a huge park. There's plenty of
Fisher Hill
I'm
Park.
sorry, Fisher Hill. I go there all the time. I can't remember. So I mean, these students are really lucky to have that type of facility right next to their school. But
Can someone promote Carlos? I asked him to be here in his capacity as Fisher Hill Association president. I see him in the attendees. I just want to make sure if he has any comments that we hear them.
Yes, thank you, Heather. So as president of Fisher Hill Association, there are a few concerns that we would have. First of all, one of the largest projects now in construction in town is going on right across the site from the town-owned side. It's the Balfour senior housing project, and that is expected to end either summer or fall of 2024. So there will be some overlap in the construction process of that project and the school operation if that were to happen. Right now, the construction project, the contractor uses the parking lot, has leased the parking lot for its use. So I'm curious to see what the parking lot would be used for. The second issue that we would have would be the traffic of the buses going to this location and how that would go through the neighborhood, since we already have Runkle School not that far away. And the third one would be parking for teachers that has become an issue at Ronco schools since the renovation, when all the parking was deleted from the site. So now they park in the neighborhood. And just to clarify,
Hey, Carlos, I
even
hate to interrupt, but if you could turn your video off because your audio is kind of spotty.
there is a Fisher Hill Reservoir Park. It doesn't have a traditional playground as we normally see it. It has a very nice playground. Oh, sorry, it seems like it. So, which part did you not?
Oh no, we heard it, but it was
Yes. Which part did?
well, we heard we
Okay.
heard most of it, but your audio was starting to get a little interrupted.
Yes. So it was a construction site across the street. The parking for teachers and the busing of kids and how that would happen are the largest concerns that the neighborhood would have.
Great. Thank you very, very much. Any comments, David?
Just to address one of the concerns regarding traffic and buses, let's remember that Newbury College operated for over 30 years, serving at one point over 5,000 students. And there were regularly shuttle buses between Newbury College and Cleveland Circle, for instance. So the neighborhood was able to coexist with a much larger number of students and older students than what we would be anticipating here, where we're talking about just 3 grade levels. So much smaller number of students for a shorter period of time, much lower level of impacts than what the neighborhood had been accustomed to since the early 1980s.
Remind me again how many sections, if you know that.
It would likely be between 3 and 4 per grade level.
Okay. So we're talking about like a couple hundred students.
250 to 300.
Okay. And what's the age range?
So that has not been finalized yet. The initial thought was grades 6 through 8, but it might end up being lower grades instead. There are some pedagogical considerations that will go into that, but it definitely would not be more than 3 grade levels. So we're looking at about 300 students tops, and Newbury at its lowest point had an enrollment of 751.
Mike?
How many teachers, because that, and staff, because that's the issue with parking. If there are 3 grade levels, 12 classrooms perhaps, how many staff would be there?
So I think that's all contingent upon which group actually goes there. So if you think about, let's say, hypothetically, K first and second, you're generally talking about a teacher per classroom in that, and then plus the additional specialists. So I can't imagine, I would imagine that the parking lot that's there would be more than enough to accommodate the staffing needs, the surface level, and then there's also the parking lot that's in the rear of the building also that can accommodate quite a few vehicles as well. So I'm not anticipating a large a run just because we're keeping a very controlled or limited population there.
John, your hand is still up. Is this a new question?
Yes. Might not surprise people to learn I have a lot of questions. I just don't want to ask them all in a row. And Mike, Mike, did you have any others before I proceed?
I just have a comment really. Right at the moment, there's the number of people on site, on the construction site across the street is relatively small. The vehicles tend to be huge. There are some trailer trucks that pull in there and so forth. When that building goes into the point of when it gets closed in and the finish work is being done inside, there'll be a much larger number of people, typically with pickup trucks. And so the parking situation is going to change. And I think before we make a decision, we probably ought to count the number of spaces that are available in the 2 parking lots, and appreciate those are both pretty good sized parking lots, and get a sense from the contractor what what we're likely to see in terms of trace people in there probably 6 months from now when the building is closed in.
That's a very good idea. I don't remember when the opening date for the facility across the street is supposed to be, but I would imagine it's within the next year.
No, it's summer 2024. Almost
Okay.
basically 2 years, almost 2 years.
Okay. And then let's say that the Pierce question passes in May. From my work on the Driscoll, it was all 6 months to almost a year before they could break ground. Correct?
Yeah, probably looking at 6 months overlap.
Okay.
Yeah, the question is when the students are going to have to be out of the school. And that's going to be before they break ground.
Out of which
Pierce.
school? Pierce?
Pierce.
Okay. John has been very patient. I'm sorry, John.
Oh, that's fine. So first of all, I hope this doesn't seem rude, but I don't think the public that has been listening in on this should be left in the dark as to the answer to the first question I asked, which is what is the current enrollment, or at least the enrollment for next year at Driscoll, and what is the capacity of the new Driscoll? So, because those numbers were presented at the last the last school committee meeting, and for those who were witnessing the last school committee meeting, the current enrollment at Driscoll is somewhere between 450 and 500. And the expected capacity when the new Driscoll opens is somewhere in the 750 plus range. So interestingly enough, we are talking about a difference between the current enrollment and the expected capacity of about 250 or so kids, which is pretty much the number that we just heard would be using Fisher Hill. So I think that's important information to consider here. I also think these two questions, which I'd ask for your answers on right now, are important to consider. What is the difference in using Driscoll in terms of walkability for Pierce kids and versus using Fisher Hill? And has the Pierce community weighed in on the choice between using Driscoll as the space for Pierce kids during Pierce construction? I'm talking about the extra seats at Driscoll versus busing their kids to Fisher Hill.
David, do you want to take a stab at any of this? I have my own opinion, I think, especially about the first question, which, John, can you just remind me what the first question was?
The first question is...
Oh, the enrollment, right?
Well, I went through that, but then the walkability question and the question of whether the community itself has been fully briefed on these options and allowed to weigh in.
Yeah, but your first question was about...
There's a difference of about 250.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I remember what I was going to say. And believe me, I don't know because I'm not on the school committee, but assuming, since we don't know yet which ones of the kids, whether they're the little ones or the older ones, I think it's premature to be able to say, okay, well, we need space for 250 kids. We could just put them at Driscoll because we don't know which of the 250 kids right now. And they're not, what's the word for it? Like
fungible.
Yeah. So I get what you're saying, but that's making a lot of assumptions that we don't have the information to make yet. if David wants to weigh in on anything else.
No, I agree with what you just said, Heather. And I would also add that, remember, one of our plans for being able to end the Clark Road lease to save the town money is to move some of those BEEP classrooms into Driscoll. And so it's not that there would be the estimated 250 open slots. It would be significantly less than that if we are moving BEEP classrooms into Driscoll.
Is that your only option?
We have discussed a variety of options, including soliciting voluntary transfers to other schools that might have a little bit of room. But we certainly do not want to be in a position where we are forcing students to leave their school community and join some other school in order to accommodate everyone. Certainly, if there are families that willingly would like to send their students from Driscoll to Heath, for example, and Heath has room in that grade level, I'm confident that the school department would be quite open to that. That's something that already takes place now to some degree, but we can't rely on that as a policy moving forward. We have to always have other plans, because what if there are only 5 or 6 families that pursued that? What would we do with the other 200 plus?
How many BEEP kids are you talking about moving to Driscoll?
At minimum, it would be 3 classes, but if we could do more, we would look to do that.
And how many is that?
Roughly 60.
So you'd still have roughly 200 spaces to fill.
That's again assuming that it would only be 3. It might be more than 3.
Okay.
Well, and when you build,
with you.
when you open a new school, you induce some demand. I mean, there are a lot of moving parts, and I'm not sure I really want to try to ascribe some malfeasance on the part.
No, I'm not.
No, but I mean, the line
options
of
here?
questioning is starting to get to the point where it almost sounds accusatory.
Well, I apologize if it does, but I think part of the reason for that is that it shouldn't be this hard to get answers. I haven't yet heard the answer to the walkability question, or the answer to whether the community has been in on these discussions of the options for their children between Pierce, perhaps between Driscoll, perhaps, and Fisher Hill, Newbury.
There was a survey that went out to the Pierce community regarding what their preferred options would be. Dr. Guillory, do you want to describe that survey?
Sure. Their preferred option was to use Clark Road.
Okay.
So that's what they're to preserve their school community. So what happens when you start mixing or saying, well, let's put this group into another school, you lose the identity of the schools, because you're now taking Pierce and saying, okay, now you're going to go and domicile in Driscoll. That means then I'm changing school codes and configurations and all of those types of things. So that's the response that the community came back with, is that we don't want to merge our schools. So
that applies.
John.
So we did. So
Yeah.
we did do what you said, and we got the feedback from their respective communities that they wanted to remain as separate entities.
Bernard has been very patient. He has his hand up.
Yeah. I doubt if either one of these schools, Driscoll or Newbury, is walkable. And what is the distance that's considered walkable? My first question. And secondly, therefore, you're going to have a big transportation bill. Remind me, is transportation included in the budget that you prepared?
Yes, transportation was reflected in there.
Okay.
And so transportation is the largest impact on that budget.
Okay. But okay, the distance that's considered walkable, is it a half a mile or a mile?
I mean, it kind of depends on how old the child is, but most transportation professionals use a half mile when they're talking about walkability.
And it's also the topography, where what folks may have to cross, of what natural barriers may be there also.
So neither school is walkable.
Oh, Bernard, that's just not true. It's
Yeah.
just not
Well,
true.
I can walk there.
Talk to Tommy Vitolo about this. And
A lot of
the bus
people
that runs
walk
between Pierce
their
and Driscoll.
kids to schools, Bernard, in Brookline. It's definitely more.
But from Brookline Village to Driscoll or Newberry,
He's saying that the Pierce students couldn't walk to Driscoll or to Fisher Hill.
Yeah.
Which
I
think is
see.
correct.
well,
which I
thanks,
think-
Marion.
But it's not
I
correct.
understood. I actually understood what you were saying.
It's not correct.
David.
I will say, in fairness to John's point, that of course it depends where in the school zone you live. So there are
Thank you,
parts
David.
of the Pierce catchment area that are fairly close to Driscoll, but there are also parts that are quite far from Driscoll. So there's no easy way to answer your question, John, because it really depends where within the school district the child resides, and also where within the buffer zone.
The question is which is more walkable, and
Our
are
buffer
any-
zones are
are
quite
any
John,
walkable
please,
to
please
Newbury?
don't interrupt
I
until somebody is.
I apologize
completed
for
their thought.
interrupting. I just don't feel I'm getting answers to the question.
Well, then you can talk to them offline, but this presentation is not just for you. It is
I get
for
it.
all
I
of
get
us.
it. I get it.
Mike?
Yeah, so I think what I want to say to John is this is a little bit more complicated than just looking at, well, there are so many seats over here and there's so many seats over there. It is a matter of the school community wanting to keep its cohesion, and I think that David made a very apt point. When you take a bunch of Pierce kids and you put them into Driscoll, the friendships change, the whole sense of community changes, and community is very important to any school, and particularly Pierce has had a very strong sense of community for a long time. So I get I really do accept the point about Driscoll not being the appropriate place, even if the numbers matched up perfectly. But there's still, the question is, well, how old will the kids be? They haven't decided that yet. They haven't, and so that affects walkability. A sixth grader is going to walk a lot further than a first grader. So there are a lot of things that you're asking that aren't as easy to answer as, oh yeah, here's a number. And I think we need to be patient and, let's see how this plays out, and recognize that the schools may change their point of view once they figure out what they want to do.
I'll also say this. I think, John, I know you at this point pretty well. I can read your body language. I think maybe part of your frustration, please correct me if I'm wrong. When we start to talk about values, it's really, it kind of makes it hard when we don't share the same values. So I have to say I'm fairly agnostic. I don't have kids. So, separating kids to save money, I could go with that. Or I could go with this notion that you want to protect like a school identity and community. If that's not your shared value, then that's okay. I think we just have to, start saying, what we are willing to pay for and what's important to us. I'm hearing that keeping the cohort somewhat together is important to the school district and also the school community. Maybe that is not a shared value amongst all of us. The other thing I want to point out is the debt exclusion for Newberry was now a couple of years ago, and we still haven't quite figured out what we're going to do. We have some time. And so I don't really see any other pressing need as much as this for what to do with the space short term. And when I use the term short term, I'm thinking 5 years. So this could potentially save us money. Yes, we're probably going to have to spend some money, but it's already factored into the cost of the debt exclusions that we've passed and that we hope to pass. But by all means, if there are other pressing town needs, we should consider them. But to my knowledge, I haven't really heard of too many. I remember we were kind of pleading for departments to come up with proposals as to how to use this space short term. John, do you want to say anything?
Just
more?
one more.
Okay.
I'd be a lot more content with this discussion tonight if there had been listening sessions for Pierce parents at which all of these options were presented. We could hear from Pierce parents themselves whether they agree that they won't have cohesion if they have to go to a brand new school that is in closer distance to their current school, as opposed to going to a school that needs what's the number we're being presented tonight, and another how many millions of dollars of worth of work in order to be made ready after we've already spent, as we all know, some 100 million on a brand new Driscoll school that's going to have 250 or so empty spaces in it. Subtract the Driscoll, subtract the Beep spaces, which is only about 60. Have there been any listening sessions with Driscoll parents, publicly noticed listening sessions, such as there were when there was discussion a while back before COVID of some of these issues at the time that there was consideration by the school department of building a Baldwin school? Because I went to some of those sessions because people were wondering which kids are going to go to the new Baldwin school, from which districts. And they had listening sessions around the town. Those listening sessions were good. That's where you find out how parents feel about these plans. I'm hearing a lot of planning being done by a select board and a school committee that don't seem to have had any listening sessions for parents. That's my point, and I'll stop talking.
So the survey that Dr. Guillory did doesn't count?
The description of the survey doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't answer the question if people were offered the choice of Driscoll seats in the new Driscoll, would they accept that as preferable to what now is under discussion, which is Newbury? All I heard was, well, actually, they like something they're not going to get, which is the Clark Road spaces, which, by the way, doesn't really apply to the discussion we're having here. We're talking about a discussion of some 250 kids and where they will go. There aren't that many kids from Pierce right now at Clark Road. There just aren't. No,
but what you mentioned about, I was on the select board back when Baldwin was still a thing. What I remember is that the hysteria was who was going to get pulled out from their school community to be shoved into this brand new school community that nobody identified with.
Right.
So you're kind of forcing people to go through the exact same thing. You're going to pull current Pierce families apart and shove them into other schools. And you think that they're going to be supportive of that?
I'm not going to conclude what they will say if they're given the opportunity to speak and to hear the options.
But the survey did.
No, his description of the answer to that survey didn't even answer my question. Were they even asked if they would prefer the option of Driscoll if they could have it versus the option of Newbury? All he said was the first choice they would have is to stay at Maimonides, which frankly didn't make sense as an answer because there's not that many Driscoll students at Maimonides right now.
Can we please stop talking about Dr. Gilroy in the third person? He is right here.
Miriam, I'm sorry, I see your hand up.
I would actually like to give either David Perlman or Dr. Gilroy a chance to respond. I do have other things to say, but I feel like we've been talking about them and they're right here, can answer for themselves.
David?
So John, to answer your question, the survey did indeed explicitly ask whether the Pierce community would like to go to Driscoll. These were the categories that Pierce parents and caregivers could choose from. Option 1, stay at Clark Road. Option 2A, Driscoll grades K through 2 would go to Driscoll. Option 2B, that grades 6 through 8 would go to Driscoll. Option 3 was a mix of Driscoll and FRR. And option 4 was to sort of scatter about it through all the schools where there are open spots.
I didn't hear Newberry in there.
Newberry wasn't on the table when that survey was done, I don't think, right?
Correct.
Okay, so
If they're
my
willing to go to one, space, then they are probably willing to go to another. Basically, what you're getting at is a question of whether or not they're willing to go to a new school community. It doesn't quite matter, where they stay together, as long as they stayed together, and that's what they chose.
I don't
So
think
John, they were asked explicitly about Driscoll.
John,
Hold on, Mike. Let David.
I was going to say, so John, they were explicitly asked about going to Driscoll and whether it be K2 or 6-8. In addition to that, they were asked some broader questions. How important is it to maintain community? How important to maintain programming? How important to streamline logistics? How important to be fiscally responsible? How important to minimize risk? I would be happy to share that survey with you. It was actually quite comprehensive and detailed. There were 326 respondents, so we got a very good cross-section.
Please do share that. Miriam has her hand up.
Thank you. First, I'm going to have to say I 100% agree with Heather. There's a values gap here, and you're coming at this with something that you want that doesn't agree with what's been presented, and you are just shooting holes in everything they're saying. Fine, you are more than welcome to do that. But I feel strongly that these decisions were not made without thought and input, and without really looking at all the options. And I really want to acknowledge that. I know that there was a lot of input from the Driscoll and the Pierce community, because I got a whole heck of a lot of emails. And I'm guessing you got a whole heck of a lot of emails too. Everyone was very happy to share their opinion. And frankly, I am all one for transparency, and I'm all one for community engagement and input. But sometimes some decisions have to be made with community input, but not always with what the community wants, because it's either not feasible or it's not the right decision for the larger picture. And in this case, obviously, Clark Road is not an option. So how do you achieve something similar in terms of what the survey is telling you, what parents are telling you? And certainly the emails that I got were not in favor of people going to Driscoll. I don't know about the ones you got. So I think that Heather is really right. This is a really good use of a resource that we already have, that is in fact much lower cost than almost all the other options, that does in fact speak to what parents have been saying. While I agree, I think we still need a few more answers to make a definitive decision. I don't see why this is so problematic. And I really think that we need to step back and really consider this in the larger picture of, in fact, what is right for the school community. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Miriam. I have almost forgotten that we have town meeting. So this has been a very eventful discussion. Bernard, did you have something that you wanted to add?
Yeah, given that we're about to go to town meeting and my warrant article 31 was on the agenda, and I doubt that we're going to get to it. I just want to say that I want to answer people's questions from last Tuesday's meeting. And yeah, it's not going to make any sense to do it right now. So if you don't mind.
Okay. Hold on, Bernard. Challenge accepted. We will get to it. I think we are not ready to vote on this tonight, but I really appreciate the presentation. I think there are some questions that we would like to get some answers to. Chaz, did you want to wrap up anything? And then we will, of course, talk about next steps.
Right. Thanks. I do think so. In terms of next steps, we will probably try and put this back on the calendar for right after Thanksgiving for additional discussion. In the interim period, if individual members of the select board, for example, Mike, you raised that question about can we count the parking spaces available? We will do that. If there are other questions on the town side that need answering in terms of data or process or anything else, individual members of the select board, please reach out to me. We'll figure it out. We've got 2 weeks when we will figure that out. Similarly, I would just ask in terms of the long-term planning, we talked about this at the end, but I want to reinforce it for the planning department's benefit. Where we left things over the summer is that the planning department was working to help revise the charge and kind of come to that conclusion. But those two kind of crucial pieces of information, if we have time to discuss next time we come together, are one, do you want this committee to focus on putting Newbury on the SIP, unexcluded debt and revenue, or are they authorized to consider debt exclusion? Two, what's the order of magnitude of the project that you are willing, that you, the select board, would like them to count in this, if there is one, or would you like them to be totally open on that front? And Kara is promoted here in case there's anything else on that front that you need to ask or in advance.
Thank you. Can I mention one thing, Heather?
Yes, of course.
So Kara Bruton, Director of Planning and Community Development. I was getting transferred, so the town administrator might have already said this, but the other piece that was flagged as an open question the last time we were before you in August is whether you all feel comfortable giving the committee direction that for thinking about permanent uses that have been identified and that are already using the Newbury site, for now permanently, are the Public Buildings Division, as well as a good bit of space from the IT department, about 1,500 square feet. And that's basically to manage all of the computer turnovers. And the reason why they're there is because they've been pushed out of school spaces as renovations have happened. So those are two uses that are currently using Newbury. They have nowhere else to go. And so it'd be great to get some confirmation if you all felt comfortable. And we can do this, with individual comments offline, that we recognize that those are uses that need to be either put back into a permanent solution here or, figure out where they might go else. Otherwise. And then the third permanent use that was identified in the memo was, thanks to Superintendent Guillory, a permanent space for 35 administrative office spaces. So that's completely separate from tonight's conversation. So I just invite you to look at that charge, and we haven't received any comments yet, but we would love to get some. Thank you.
So I think that we're now setting the scene for our next conversation, but we should put a pin in this because we have to deal with some stuff before town meeting. Thank you very much to Dr. Guillory and Chair Perlman for coming. Okay, we will turn to warrant articles. We don't have to discuss the snow and ice one because that actually was resolved last night at town meeting. But let's do 31 first, and then we'll talk about 12. So Bernard, where does it currently?
I'm sorry. Try to be very quick. And by the way, what I suggest I also do is to send to the select board through Devin for public consumption more detailed answers to what I recall 4 questions that select board members have asked. But I'll give a quick overview of them right now. First question was that the article is very confusing, convoluted. Someone said not on the select board but elsewhere. And what I tried to do there is to circulate the memo on the listserv to help people focus on the fact that the key to this article is the complaint process. There's a lot of other stuff in 3.14, but the key issue in this article is setting up a complaint process. And I think that's fairly straightforward and not simple, but it's fairly straightforward. And in the packet for the select board, there is what I call a complaint summary, complaint process, which summarizes step by step the complaint process. The other question that was raised at the select board was the article seems to be giving a lot of power to the director, Lloyd Gelano. I think the answer to that is that, well, that's his job, right, to do things like this. And he answers to the town administrator and to the select board. And in the article, there are a number of places where I have the director consult with town council to make sure that he's not sort of stepping out of bounds, or that the complaint process does not compromise the interests and rights of complainants or others. The third issue was its value statement. And the only thing I can say to that is, that was a word I used as sort of a shorthand, but the idea of diversity and inclusion in community relations goes back to 2014 in the original warrant article. We've always talked about not the word Brookline values, but values that this town is committed to. Now, I'm not sure whether we need to do anything more than that, but this is not something that is new. And the final question that I heard was, I seem to have taken away a lot of power from the commission. What are they going to do? And throughout the job of the commission is not to be a sort of quasi-judicial and punitive complaint processing body, but rather because they're volunteers. Yeah, they have already said on numerous occasions they don't have the capacity, the training to do what warrant article 12 and 13 in the June town meeting, or the 2019 warrant article of Arthur Conquest asked them to do. They don't have the capacity to do that. But they do have the capacity, and what we've always, since 2014, wanted the commission to do was to be the body in town that really was an advocate for diversity, inclusion, and good community relations. And the body in town that was alert to issues of discrimination and develop the expertise to be able to advise the select board, town meeting, whoever, about ways in which issues of discrimination or discrimination concerns or systemic issues in town that result in inequitable results can be addressed. So that was their role all along, and I think in some way I buttressed that role in warrant article 31. So those are the 4 questions I recall that came up. If you don't mind, I'll send out an email, public email, to sort of fill in the details there, since we're kind of rushed for time.
Sure. I have a couple of questions. Does anybody else have some questions? I guess my first question is, I heard something about motion to refer. Are you aware?
No, I'm aware of that. That
Okay.
makes, we've been going through this for what, 3 years now. To refer is totally unnecessary, and the idea of referring it back to the commission, which well, let me not get into the into opinions about the commission, but
I heard that there was a motion to refer, but I didn't hear to which body.
yeah, this is to the commission.
Okay. And then my other question is, let's say that the director would not be able to execute these duties, and that we would have to hire another staff person to do this. Would you still support your warrant article if it required an additional staff member?
Well, right now, the diversity office has a number of actually very well, highly trained staff people. Most of the complaints they receive are ADA complaints, and Sarah Kaplan deals with them very, very well. So it's not just the director, but the actual office that has these responsibilities and is carrying them out now. Is that answer? I think we lost Heather.
Sorry,
Are you back?
I froze. But I want to recognize Chaz, did you just raise your hand?
Yeah, I talked to the team over there. I do think that there is separate and apart from this, although this discussion brings it together, or brings it kind of to a head. ODICR has 3 employees currently and a staff budget for 4. They do currently both handle complaint resolution as well as community outreach and endeavorment. And from a structural standpoint, I think regardless of the outcome on this warrant article, there is an inherent tension in the structure of ODICR between its role as a conciliation entity, an entity that tries to bring people together to solve problems, and an adjudicative body, a body that tries to a body that has the responsibility to issue final determinations on complaints. That's why, generally speaking, even if you look at for example, the policy on discrimination and harassment, reports can be made to ODICR, but barring potential conflict of interest or other issues that prevent the HR department from investigating them, the policy says that it's the HR department that investigates on that front. It's an area of tension that I think ODICR has been operating under for some time. And so I don't, it's just a matter of additional information. Does it impact, I can't say the degree to which this warrant article impacts or doesn't impact that tension, but that tension exists regardless. And I think it's important for us to just be aware that that is out there, that there is concern that if you're consolidating these roles anyway, regardless of whether or not this warrant article passes, that there may be some need to consider that front.
Well, in this warrant article, the director does not have a jurisdiction over matters related to employees, which is what HR would be handling. That goes directly to HR or school HR or the police review process. So I think that tension you mentioned is addressed in the article.
So if I recall, we were talking about this at the very end of our last meeting, and the only person who had not gotten to weigh in was Mike Sammons. So Mike, do you have any thoughts? We've got about 8 minutes left. And I was reminded that warrant article 12 is probably going to be postponed until the 29th. So, Mike?
Well, I sent Bernard and I had an email exchange earlier, and I had my doubts about, I had asked the question about, okay, what is the commission for? And he provided a very good answer to that, I have to say. And he's really got me to think about, okay, what are we trying to do here? It's not politically correct, perhaps, to say it, but the commission has not been particularly effective. And I think we have to recognize that. And there's a complaint process that exists. They were given the opportunity to come back and either revise or just send back what they had before if they wanted to. They haven't even done that. So I think we have to put something in place that makes sense. And the truth of the matter is, we can change it. We can change it as the commission evolves. We can change it as we see how it works. I hate to abandon that. I really had hoped that the commission would have a broad role and use that broad role. It's been very slow to pick that up. And as they say, it's not a nice thing to say about a group of people who are, honorable and working hard.
Miriam?
Yeah, I just want to speak to that. Mike, the commission has been short 5 people since this passed. And they've had challenges making quorum because of that. We are due to, in fact, vote on 5 people today to fill out the commission.
Yeah.
So I feel like the commission, they have had a couple meetings. I'm not actually on the subcommittee for this, so I don't go to those meetings, but they have had a couple of meetings for this. I just feel like we were asking them to do something they simply didn't have the bandwidth to do in an amount of time they didn't have. They were tasked with this at the last town meeting. So, I feel like, and I think the expectation was for them to come back with changes a year in May. And we are cutting them off at the pass. We're not giving them the opportunity to do the work. They have a subcommittee. The subcommittee is trying to meet. They now, hopefully by the end of our meeting today, in the next 15 minutes, we'll have 5 more people. Some of whom I think would be good for this subcommittee. So that's where just directly to that concern that you've.
All right, I'm prepared to listen to all arguments, and that's that's a good to say that's a good excuse is not excuse sometimes is a pejorative. It's a good reason. I understand that.
So John has his hand up.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much. I want to say thank you to Bernard. I heard him say a while back that he was going to put all of his best energies and thinking into trying to offer the town a way out of this standoff that we've been in for the last couple of years, almost 3 years really, over how best to handle complaints through the diversity, inclusion, and community relations process. He has worked really hard and he has met with every constituency and he has refined and refined and refined this based on critiques. Every time he brought it back to another meeting, there'd be more critiques. And I think this is ready to go. And Bernard, I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Are we ready to take a vote?
I'm ready.
Okay. I'm not sure what I'm moving. Favorable action.
Move favorable action on warrant Article 31.
Okay.
And we're talking about, I think it's actually as drafted by the advisory committee, right? As recommended by the advisory committee.
Drafted by the advisory committee.
Yes, recommended by the advisory committee.
Right. That's the most recent iteration of the warrant article. And what is in the packet.
Okay. All those in favor of favorable action, Bernard?
Of course, yes.
John?
Yes.
Miriam?
No.
Mike?
I have to abstain. I'm not, I hear both Miriam and Bernard, and they're both making legitimate arguments.
I was going to abstain. Darn it. Then I will abstain. That leaves us with a quorum. And actually, I believe that means that we are offering favorable action.
That's the parliamentary rule. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
But that also means that Bernard and John, you are the only 2 who can speak for the select board at the floor of town meeting. Bernard, since you're the petitioner, I think it makes more sense for John.
Yep.
Oh, thanks.
When is it coming up?
It's going to be on the 29th.
Yeah.
Do I have a say in that?
I don't mind speaking to it.
Okay.
With the stipulation that I have abstained.
Is everyone okay with that?
With what?
That Mike.
Bernard has to be comfortable with that because that's important.
No, well, I think John should be the primary speaker since he voted in favor, but we can ask the moderator to let Mike speak and, give his perspective, which I think is important.
Well, I think it's redundant to have both of them
Yeah,
speak.
I don't want to, let John, okay, go ahead.
I will do it. I just didn't want to do it if it more properly belongs with Bernard.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm going to be the petition. I'm the petitioner, so I'll be.
Okay, I get you. I
Yeah.
get you. I'll do it. I'll do it.
Okay.
All right. Fine. Yeah.
Okay. Clear as mud. We do need to get to the appointments that Miriam brought up.
Yes.
So last week, Miriam and I met with a lot of people who are interested in serving on the committee that we just talked so much about, the commission rather. So Miriam, would you like to talk about the applicants? And then I will move those names before we break so that they can start town meeting. Oh, you're muted.
Yes, okay, I hope I can. I don't have the list in front of me, so I hope I get everybody. So we, if somebody wants to tag me on, send me that list, that'd be good. Of course, my hearing aids just died, so.
I can Chi Wu, Adina Walker, Carlos,
Tamayo,
Alicia,
Cantu,
and Jacob. Was it Jaffe?
Jacob, yes. So I will give you one line on everybody. How about that, real quick, or should I not? Yeah. Okay. Chi Wu, you all know, she's very involved in town politics, town meeting member. Is she still a town meeting member?
Yes.
Yes, and language access is her bailiwick as one of her many areas of expertise, and is excited to help CDICR really move forward with that piece. And Adina Walker is a woman of color, who's a Jewish woman of color, who I think really brings an exciting organizing lens and community engagement expert who works at a not-for-profit now. And Carlos Tamayo is also a town meeting member. He is a resident of the Brookline Housing Authority. He is bilingual. He's going to be doing some Spanish translation for my professional day job work, and a really fresh lens to the work of the CDICRC. Alicia Cantu, who is a management and efficiency expert. That's all I got to say. Her job is to help make things work. And Jeff, right? Jacob Jaffe, who is a member of the Jewish community here in Brookline, who
I think he's a rabbi.
Yes, he's a rabbi. Thank you. And he has a couple of young kids, and he really wants to get more involved. And I think he will also bring a nice lens. Everybody's really bringing something unique to the committee, and we're very excited to finally have a fully staffed CDICR.
Excellent. So we will be moving this as a slate. And I'm just going to randomly choose someone because one of the applicants needs to only be for a term of until 2024. So I'll just choose Carlos because he's in the middle of all the names. Everyone else is for a term expiring in 2025. Any comments before I call the roll? Bernard.
Yeah, the only comment, I will vote for this slate. It's a diverse slate. Hopefully, unlike the commission in the past, it can work together and really get something done. And that has been a huge problem, at least since the time I've been on the board. But now that it's fully staffed up or membershiped up, or whatever the word is, hopefully, it will play a positive role. And from the standpoint of my Warren article, there's a lot for it to do and very important stuff, and hopefully it can do it.
Believe me, Bernard, I brought it up with each person that we interviewed, the challenges that this group has faced, and that I really want people who are able to work together and be respectful. So I'm optimistic. So all those in favor? Bernard?
Okay, are we voting just on Carlos now?
Oh, no, it's the
Aye.
whole slate.
Okay, yes.
John?
Yes.
Miriam?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes,
And the chair votes yes.
great.
And that concludes our business for this evening. See you at town meeting.
See you at town meeting.
Wait, sorry, Chair Hamilton,
Yeah.
were we not gonna do the OPEB and the
Oh, shoot, I
retirement?
totally forgot.
Just really quick, we have literally 1 minute, but it would be good to take care
Yeah.
of that tonight.
Okay, retirement board, right. The appointment of Lincoln Heineman, who is our new finance director, to the retirement board for a term ending in 2024. And then we have an OPEB committee appointment after that. So all those in favor?
Which is actually also Lincoln, so you could take it together.
Oh, excellent. Okay, then I will do so. Let me, the OPEB committee also in favor of appointing the finance director, Lincoln, to the OPEB committee. So both appointments grouped together. All those in favor? Bernard?
Aye.
John?
I'm going to say aye enthusiastically, but also just with a footnote that as far as I know, the OPEB committee has not met in a long time. And I do hope it's an active committee that still has a purpose, but best I could determine hasn't met since 2018. So,
Well, hopefully that will change.
yeah.
Miriam?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you so much to Big. Good luck.